Hello. Hello, everyone. Everyone watching on YouTube, people hiding in their homes. Hopefully things are going well. This is actually probably a PHP meetup first, where we have two meetups in the same month. So you can thank, I don't know, the Catholic Church for making October super long. So
Sorry. We're going to get in trouble for that one, aren't we?
What? They invented the calendar.
I don't know.
The Gregorian calendar. Welcome to the meetup. We have a pretty awesome talk here by Colin, so I'm excited for that. I think as we get closer to the end of the year, Sean and I usually try to go back and forth and try to decide what our December situation is with the actual meetup itself and whether or not to schedule more, or what the threshold is there. Given that we're all doing these remotely now, I think there's probably it's easier to sort of justify having one in December and possibly January as well, considering that they're a little bit easier to run now because we don't have to worry about venues or anything like that. Watch it, whenever you want. So there's that great aspect as well. If you're a sponsor, that also means that your sponsorship is archived for the inevitable future. So keep that in mind if you're looking to sponsor a meetup. That being said, we were sort of chatting before we went live about some of the news in the PHP land. Colin, you were talking about PHP 8 and some of the cool stuff that was coming. Out of the things you mentioned to us offline, what were some of the things that you think are the coolest? You mentioned the JIT, you mentioned some constructor sugar.
Yeah. So I was, I was just saying that I went to a meetup. It was a Toronto meetup last month where they had Sarah Goldman on. And Sarah Goldman is a core contributor to PHP. She was talking about what's coming up in PHP 8. And so I'm pretty much just going to regurgitate whatever she said. Mm-hmm. And she's a good source, so it's all right. But one of the most important things that she said is the JIT, which stands for just-in-time compilation. And what that means is the PHP interpreter is going to be able to identify code that gets executed a lot. And PHP is a dynamic interpreted language, right? So the interpreter reads it, compiles it down into bytecode, and then that bytecode gets evaluated. So it doesn't run directly on like the bare metal. It's not machine code. But what the JIT is going to be able to do is identify that code that runs a lot, and then it compiles it down to machine code. So it'll actually execute faster. So it'll be similar to like the speed you might get with something like C, which is a compiled language that compiles down to machine code. So that's sort of like a really good added benefit that we get for free, just by not doing anything because it's free. So that's a pretty exciting thing. But yeah, you were saying that there was some sugar as well in PHP 8. One of the things that I thought was actually pretty interesting was there's a new syntax for your constructor arguments, where you can put the visibility of the constructor argument in the parameter list. So let's say you have a class foo, right? And it has an instance variable called, or an attribute called bar. And it's a protected attribute. And so in the constructor definition, you could say protected int bar, right? And that's all you have to do. You don't, in the body of the method, you don't have to say this bar equals bar. PHP just reads that, understands that there's going to be an attribute called bar. It's going to be protected, and the value of bar being passed into the constructor is the value that's going to be assigned to it. So you don't have to type as much, which is kind of nice.
So that's called constructor property promotion in the RFC.
Fancy.
So yeah, pretty fancy. So it's basically like you're almost defining the visibility in the construct arguments, it looks like. I mean, there's lots of cool stuff in here. There's like I was writing some Python recently and like lamenting the fact that PHP didn't have named arguments, especially for constructors that might take like a lot of arguments or something. But in PHP 8, we have named constructors. Or named arguments, named arguments. It looks like another cool thing is the what's it called? Weak map. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at weak maps now. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff in here. A trailing comment and parameter list. I mean, that's pretty nice.
There was one thing that about the named arguments that I thought was actually pretty neat. During that meetup, I asked Sarah, I said, like, are there plans to kind of backport those named arguments to existing PHP functions, right? So like, you know how you've got like explode and it has the delimiter and then the array that you're going to be exploding on, or implode with the glue and whatnot. And she said, well, actually, that's the reason why PHP 8 has taken such a long time, is because they've already gone through that. So if you're writing say there's a function like fgetCSV or something like that, right? Which has a long list of parameters, and you only want to change like the enclosure or something, which is like the 4th or 5th in the parameter list down. Now you don't actually have to specify those default values. You can just say enclosure equals single quote or whatever it happens to be, which is really kind of nice to all of the existing PHP functions, which I thought was really cool. One of the things
it's nice that sorry, I was just going to add that, like, I know that there's sort of a push to make things more class-based, but it's nice that those old functions that are still used even under underlying classes, especially in like third-party libraries where they might be calling fputs and fgets and all this stuff underneath. It's nice that you can have that and clean it up a little bit and not have to worry about those defaults getting messed up or anything, or making sure that they're the same and not messing with the defaults, or even, I guess, with I wonder if that works with something like splat, the splat operator, which would spread. I wonder if you could do that, something like that, because that would make it really nice. Where, I mean, like, I've been running a ton of JavaScript lately, and it's really nice just to be able to spread a bunch of arguments into a function, especially when you're using things like call and bind in JavaScript. I wonder if you could spread into something like that and actually have dynamic arguments at runtime. That'd be kind of cool.
I think so. If I understand what you're asking, is it kind of like you have an associative array, and then you can destructure that? You can use the splat operator to pull that out, and then so the names in the associative array line up with the named arguments. That would be kind of wild. That would be really wild.
That would be nice, right?
I can't imagine. Well, I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see. Actually, we can see right now if we wanted to, right? We could pull down.
I'm sure it's an RFC. Yeah. Maybe someone in the comments can go and take a peek for us while we're chatting here, but it'd be nice to see if you can spread arguments, named arguments. Spreading named arguments, I guess, would be what you'd say it is. But that'd be pretty sweet.
That would be wild.
Is there anything, Sean, that you're? I mean, did you see that Taylor did mention that they've got PHP 8 working in Laravel with all the test passing with like pretty much minimal work?
Yeah, that's a really encouraging thing for people that need to upgrade. But the other part, based on my history in PHP, is all the different ways that people make PHP work, and how hard it can be to upgrade from going from 5.6 to what did we go to 6 or 7? Actually, we skipped 6, so going to 7 and then 7.2 or 1, 2, 4, all that. There were all these little things that really made it hard to upgrade because somebody did something weird, and that's because PHP was so free with a lot of what you can do.
It's a free spirit.
Yeah, exactly. But one of the things, and this one's like nothing crazy or special. This one to me has always been, I don't know if I have some form of OCD or something, but I really like the union type one.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because I have some method where I'm explicitly returning an integer, and I have that, and then some of them might be integer or null, and my mind just goes crazy seeing that on PHP throwing little squiggly underline. Like, what am I going to do here?
Well, I mean, a friend of mine was doing, he got bit with, was he doing str replace or something? And he passed an empty string or something like that. And he had, it was some built-in function that he passed a null, and it treated it as an empty string, but it should have actually errored, because that meant that the data that was being passed to that was actually invalid. He meant to have a string, but it sent null because, like, I guess it was like a form or something, a form submission. And something like that, like a built-in function that expects you to have a string, I assume that with something like strict types, like now you can have union types on those built-in functions, which might take a string or a number, but not a null. So that might be nice to stipulate exactly, because I mean, a lot of those built-in functions, they'll just take like almost anything and then just coerce it into whatever, right? Where, I mean, like when we're using now that we have like typed properties and stuff like that in classes, you could just say, I want this thing to be this can only be a string, and then you don't have to worry about us being typing everything all the way down, especially for like properties on classes. But it'd be nice if they would start I wonder if there's a way to sort of access that and make sure that it'd be nice to see that the union types are passed up to the built-in functions as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's all these new string helpers. Like those shouldn't take anything but strings, or strings or things that can be coerced to things with a toString method.
And I think actually that actually, I know I said this is probably a little thing when I first talked about it 5 minutes ago, but now I'm starting to realize, wait a minute. This actually is bigger because, like you said, we might want to return or take a string and an integer, but not a null.
Mm-hmm.
But in the current format, we can't. We don't have any checks in there. And I remember the company we used to work at a few years back when we were converting everything to having return types and all that, and how many bugs there actually were because strings were being passed and they were expecting a number, but nobody was doing a check. So it just makes it a little bit much more strict and in my mind, much more bug free.
Yeah.
Something that you were saying that was actually it's new to PHP 8 when you said a string or something that could be coerced to a string, something that has a toString method. And also talking about union types, PHP 8 introduced a new type called stringable, or I think it's a new interface. Yeah, a new stringable interface. And so basically a stringable interface, it means that it hints that you need to have a toString method. And then so your functions or methods can accept a string or
here we go. I see it. They're reading my mind.
Yeah.
So that's a great example of like a plain value or reference or whatever you want to call it. And then something that's actually got a toString method. You have to worry about type hinting all the classes or writing your own stringable interface. Well, yeah, that's cool. So yeah, I mean, exciting. There's lots of cool things coming up. And I mean, like, I know Sean and I definitely agree on this. It's like, this is one of the reasons to like make sure you're not doing anything super wonky with your framework. Just like use as much of the what's included in the box as possible. Then you get free upgrades.
Yeah. Like
Laravel will it'll probably be a minor version bump, most likely to work with PHP 8. And then, there it is, bump your version, Bozer update. Hopefully you're good to go. Run your tests and you should be happy.
Something that made some ripples, actually, thinking about it and PHP 8 and Laravel and whatnot was, I'm not sure if you guys heard or not, but the Faker library has been archived. You remember that? So about a few days ago, I think this made news. So the author of the Faker library, so the thing that's used in all of our tests or in our factories, our seeders, all those sorts of things for generating fake user data, has actually been archived. The original author of the framework wrote a blog post about why he decided to do that. Some of the reasons, actually, I think the main reason was he thought that the design of Faker was flawed, so that it's actually quite large because it supports over 70 languages. It's not necessarily pluggable, so you can't say I just want English or I just want French or Spanish or whatever. You get everything. Mm-hmm. And so it's actually, as a package, it's about 3 megabytes in size. And because Faker is used in so many applications, so many Laravel applications, Symfony applications, anything, right? And there's all this CI. Every time that the tests run in CI, it has to pull down the package, and the number of downloads for Faker is huge. Which actually interprets and moves into a large carbon footprint. And
I see.
So the author he's a green person, and couldn't actually bear the burden of understanding that his library is actually causing environmental damage. And so he said, "Yeah, it's done. I'm archiving it. I'm not going."
I mean, it must be at this point. It must be feature complete. Like
that's one of the things he says. It hasn't actually. It's a good library, right? But it's not it's not going to be upgraded for support. PHP 8, it won't run in PHP 8. So that seems to be a bit of a problem. Now, I did see a tweet from Taylor along the same time saying, "Hey, we've got you on this. We're going to take over I don't know if they're going to take over the project, but they're going to make sure that it's compatible with PHP 8 and that it can work with Laravel." So
Cool. I mean, yeah, people who are big Faker fans or use Faker a lot should keep an eye on that just in case they upgrade and realize, oh, damn, my package is all broke. That being said, I think we should power on and jump into our presentation here.
Sure, no problem. Let me just get started. I do have some slides here.
We're not there yet.
Oh, yeah, we have our normal run through here.
Oh,
yeah.
Yep. This is PHP Vancouver, October 2020, number 2, a rare first in our history. If you're not following us on Twitter yet, follow us at PHP Vancouver. Sean will usually tweet out some stuff about the links that we're using, and if you want to follow, maybe if you're not necessarily part of the meetup, but you want to follow on Twitter, you can actually find the links, and you'll see when we go live and stuff like that. Use the hashtag VanPHP, and we'll find your tweets, retweet them, and all that fun stuff. YVR Dev Slack, so if you're not on there, check it out. There's a PHP channel. I don't think it's been too active lately, but every once in a while someone posts in there and shares some cool projects that they found. If you're not looking for PHP stuff necessarily, there's still a huge group of people. I'm just going to check real quick what the actual number of people in there is at the moment. 5,351.
wow.
So that's quite a few. So there's over 5,000 people in this. I guess it's not really Vancouver, not really YVR. It's more like the BC area at this point, and probably a bunch of people from all over Canada. Really, just it's really opened up. So take a look in there if you were looking to connect with people in the BC area or Vancouver or any of the surrounding areas. Online etiquette. So we just ask people when we're doing our presentations to post questions in the chat. Those questions can then be escalated to our presentation, like so. You can make a message and we can call it up here, and our speaker can see it as well as everyone attending. So if you have questions or anything like that, please feel free to ask them in the comments section of the live feed, and we'll actually show them on our display here so people that are watching in the future can see them and their speaker can see them and you can all see them too. If you say hello, please say hello in the chat and let us know that you're there and watching, and you might have a chance to win something possibly. So keep that in mind. Do we have any sponsors this month, Sean?
No.
I mean, we do have our regular PHP Storm sponsorship.
Yeah.
But yeah, as I said at the top of the meetup, if you are interested in sponsoring now that these things are archived on YouTube, you maybe get a little bit more bang for your buck. People are working remotely now, so they're going to watch this whenever they watch it. We've had between 2 and 15 people watching at any given time. And then these things are archived on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, after we close up the live show here. If you want to get in touch with us, just hit us up on Meetup or Twitter or something like that. The sponsors really help us grow the Meetup. To run a Meetup isn't free. Our time is donated essentially, but there are fees in order to keep a Meetup running. It's $100 and something a year. So Sean and I have been paying that out of our own pockets and then recovering it when we can. That being said, it's always nice to have people sponsor and help move us towards, not having to actually pay for this out of pocket. I think there's a lot of value in sponsoring, and even if you just want to get your name out there in the community, share a job post, share a project, something like that, it's really helpful. And I think our audience appreciates people who help support the meetup. Like I would say sometimes is that if you do see a sponsor that you really enjoy, or you hear about a job opportunity or something like that from a sponsor of the meetup, please let them know that, or please pass it along if it's not for you, and let the sponsor know that you're thanking them for actually sponsoring. That being said, PHP Storm giveaway. Maybe you can talk about this, John?
We might have 1, we might have 2, we might have 3.
Oh, wow, cool.
But no, we're going to follow the standard, leave a comment in the chat like James said, say hello. What we've done is we've taken the names and the people who are watching live for one of the giveaways, and then the next one might be the people who are RSVP'd, and then the third one, that's a surprise for later. But overall, this, even though the title said PHP Storm giveaway, it's a 1-year license for one. And I had a complaint that this wasn't for all JetBrains products, but just for a license for one of the products, it could be the PHP Storm. What are the other ones?
There's the GoLand one.
Yeah, the database.
WebStorm.
Yeah,
There's Yeah, PyCharm. I think Ruby
Yeah,
Mine.
PyCharm. Yeah, there's a whole. I mean, there's probably one for every major language at this point,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then like you alluded to, Sean, there's like supplementary things for like databases and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Oh, data grip is really good, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so people who have PHP Storm doesn't mean you can't use it for something else. If you have a side project that uses a different language, or you have a tooling that you just want to expand, like it's a great opportunity to try the product for one whole year, just by saying hello in our comments section. That being said, I have to note you should join the Meetup group, the Vancouver PHP Meetup group, because that's where we post the results for the winner. So if you say hello in the chat, please check the Meetup and make sure, because that's how we notify the people who attended that there is a winner. We get your email and then we send out your license number to you. So that being said, please say hello and make sure you join the Meetup.
All right, I'll just talk quickly about our shirt. We do want to get these. We are still in progress. There'll be a link to the survey that we have. What size do you want? What color do you like? What do you want? And at some point, the COVID has really slowed this down, but at some point we're going to, also in the survey, leave your email. And then we'll reach out and say, hey, we're going to put together an order. The cost is probably going to be this much. So we've got the T-shirt with the large logo and a smaller logo on the breast pocket. So let us know which ones you like. And there's the survey if you want to screenshot really quickly, but I'll also have it in the show notes. So not to worry if you miss it. In 3, 2, 1. PHP Meetup goal, James.
Yeah, more meetups. I mean, we're really pushing that this month, considering we have 2 in 1 month. So I hope everyone appreciates the Sean and I getting this together at the last minute here, just like cramming this in and getting Colin on the radar. Like we usually say, we want to have like smaller talks, useful info, special events, hackathons. So, I mean, we'll see what happens next year with all this stuff, but it'd be cool to have some more special events. We talked about possibly doing some sort of like PHP trivia thing. And then it'd be cool to do something with like a hackathon for a charity or something like that. We just sort of have been mulling around ideas. The hackathon specifically, we probably need a sponsor, so we just need to find an opportunity for that. But yeah, that's really it. We're just trying to have more meetups, and we still want to keep going strong, even though we don't have a venue and you got to hang out at your house. But that's okay. It's okay. sip on your drink, or have a water, or just enjoy yourself, whatever time of day it is. So we sort of have this mantra here to just say, learn something that can make you money tomorrow. So making money doesn't necessarily mean like you can increase your salary overnight. That can mean you're saving time, or you have a new skill, and that eventually will translate into actually making you more valuable to your employer, even just yourself or your own company. So that's sort of what we want to do here. And so if you have something that you want to share that you think will help other people, I know Sean and I have both shared different things on like project management to refactoring code to just even new features in Laravel. I've done talks on TypeScript. I've done talks on development tools. So it's all over the place. It's just something that can help you make money tomorrow.
Just wanted to, I was on this show today, CTO.ai. It's a Vancouver company, and but they have a YouTube Twitch show called the Ops Show. So I was on earlier today talking about my code journey and about me founding the Slack channel DevOps chat, and what they don't have there is Lara chat. So I talked a bit about that, and so if you're interested, you can just go to Google the Ops Show or CTO.ai. You'll find some more very uninteresting or interesting information about me. And then another self-brag, the PHP Mentors book, I was asked to write an excerpt in it. So that's now online, and you can get the PDF or the ebook, buy it online. I think it's on LeanPub, so you kind of pick your own pricing. So you can pick like $5, $10, whatever. Not a bad price, and there's some pretty awesome names in there.
Yeah, I was if you go to the website, you can see Sean's name up there with some developer celebrities.
Yeah, I don't know how I got there, but I'll take it.
A bunch of them have spoken at our meetup, which is kind of cool.
The what?
Like a portion of them has spoken at our meetup. At least 2 of them that I saw in there.
Really?
Yeah, Taylor and Alina have both.
We had Alina?
It might have been before you started with us. So she spoke when we used to do it at Red Academy. So
I remember
yeah.
that now. That's so long ago.
Yeah, it was at least 3 or so years ago, maybe 4 years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's pretty cool that we were able to access some of those people. So it's a small world out there. But
Yeah, it
check
is.
out the book.
And then one of the other things I wanted to mention, even though my name was in the book, I managed to sneak James in by the advice he had given me. So James is in the book too.
Yeah. I was saying, where's my free copy, man? I'm in the book too.
Fine. I'll send it to you. I'll sign it too.
Oh yeah, perfect. Digital signature.
One of the things I wanted to do is I like to try and promote people in the community who maybe don't necessarily have, let's say, a big enough voice to be in a PHP mentor book. So I try and support, by retweeting or sharing these apps through the Larachat Slack community or whatever. And this one came across my radar, and I really wanted to help this guy out. So I did some QA for his app and did what I could to help him promote it. And I just wanted to share it here. I mean, the GIF here is going pretty quickly, but it's an interesting app because you can go in, you create your model, your schema, and it will build the app for you. It will build the controller. They will build the migration. They will build model and all the relation and all those things. So it's a really neat GUI to build your Laravel app.
That's cool.
So check it out, vemto.app. I believe he's doing a tweet or a retweet contest right now on Twitter. But if you want to buy it, license for it and help out, somebody who doesn't have as big of a name in the PHP community, sure he would appreciate it.
That's cool. The link is in our chat for that, for people who want to catch it later.
Thank you. All right, so finally we can get to Colin, and I do want to say one thing, that I appreciate Colin coming on. He is in Toronto. He's not Vancouver, so he's 3 hours ahead of us.
He's staying up late.
Yeah, getting close to his bedtime here, so we appreciate him very much for coming on. So Colin's going to talk about his talk. It's titled "Identify and Isolate." And if you've seen some of his Laracon talks, he's already talked a bit about this. I think we're going to expand on it a bit more. But with that being said, Colin, I will pass it all over to you.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, I actually feel like maybe it was a bit of a bait and switch there. Here, let me just share my screen. Oh, look, I'm the only one here. So let's see if this works. Share screen. Select a window or screen. So I'm going to share my, what am I going to share? I guess this one. How do I do this? Do I do the entire screen?
Yeah, you can share the screen, and then what will happen is I can then present it into the channel. Okay. All right. This is why I'm all gray and old, and I need people to help me with my email. All right. So I think I should be presenting my screen right now. Is that what's happening? And then I can come here and I can say, let's talk about practice. All right, we good? You're all good to go. All right. Take it away. Yeah. So about that, it seems like a bit of a bait and switch. So when I was talking with Sean earlier, I said, hey, I can do a talk about this refactoring technique called identify and isolate. And we're still going to do that. But identify and isolate was kind of like the latter part of a talk that I gave at Laracon, which was the importance of practice. And so I think what I wanted to do first, before we get into that, is just talk a little bit more about practice, because I feel like it kind of plays into the refactoring kata that we're going to be doing together. And so I have a little bit about that, and then we'll get deep into the code. If you did see my Laracon talk, you don't have to worry. I'm not going to be using a funny accent or anything like that this time around, though. If you do want to see that, I think you can go over to laracon.net and check out the talk there. Okay, so talking about practice, here we go. So let's talk a little bit about me first, I guess. So my name is Colin Decarlo. I'm a software, primarily web developer. I work for a company called Vehikl. We're a software consultancy located in Waterloo, which is in Ontario. I write primarily PHP and JavaScript, although I have played and worked with other languages, but always seem to come back to PHP and JavaScript. Really enjoy the languages.
I speak at various conferences, and I like to program. So that's me, and that's actually one of my favorite headshots right there from a number of years ago. Actually, I still have color in my hair there. All right, so let's talk about the agenda. It's actually pretty simple. The first thing we're going to do is let's talk about work and practice, and then let's actually just do some practice. So if I was to just come up to you today and just talk to you right now and just say, you should practice more, just blurt it out like that, you might be tempted to say something along the lines of like, go yourself, right? And that's a totally reasonable reaction, right? I come up to you and I say, hey, you should do this thing that maybe you're doing already, or maybe you're not doing, but you should do all the things that you're currently doing right now and do this other thing, practice. And I'm kind of imposing that onto you. And so that's not really what I want to say today. What I do want to say, though, is, hey, practice is important, right? And I feel like we can all agree to that. I mean, we've all seen that we get better the more we do something. So if we want to get better at skating, we skate a lot. If we want to get better at hitting a ball, we hit a ball a lot. If we want to get better at writing software, well, we should probably just write more software. But we should do it in a deliberate way, right? We should practice how we're writing our software. So I might follow up this idea of that practice is important. And I just might say, what is your biggest challenge to practicing more, right? And I would wager that the majority of the answers I would get for reasons people aren't practicing as much as they feel they ought to is the idea of time. There just isn't enough time, right? And so I'm here to say that I don't have the answer. I have an answer to how we can actually make time. Well, not make time. You can't make time. That's the thing. If you can make time, you shouldn't be writing software. You should be doing something about making time, saving the universe, or something along those lines. We have to set aside the time that we have in our day to do some practice. And so I say, put it in your calendar. There actually has been some studies that say that you are more likely to do something if you actually have it scheduled. So if you have it in your calendar, say, I'm going to practice today from 3 to 5, you're a lot more likely to actually do that if you make the effort to put it in your calendar. You get the reminder, all those sorts of things. Now, you might be thinking, okay, fine, I'll put it in my calendar, but I still have all of the work that I need to do, right? So how am I going to fit all of the work that I need to do in less time so I can do this practice that you're talking about? And to that, I say, well, let's work with intention. And what I mean about working with intention is actually just starting out each day saying, what is it that I want to accomplish today? Now, before we get to that point, working with intention comes with one little bit of a caveat, and it's like an understanding that you have to kind of really believe. And what that is that the amount of work left to do is infinite. There's always going to be work that can be done, and you will never be done, right? It's kind of bleak sounding. There's always going to be work available for you, and you're never really going to be done it. And that's actually kind of like a blessing and a curse, right? Because the way that we work is we develop something out of nothing. We use the tools and techniques and the training that we've gotten, and we take nothing and we make it something, and we give it to people, and we make their lives better, right? But in making their lives better, what we're actually doing is we say, okay, well, now that we've taken this part of your life, they'll say, oh, what would be nice is if it did this part too, right? And then so there's always going to be feature requests. There's always going to be backlogs, like of things that are filling up and whatnot. So really, the amount of work that's left to do is infinite. We're never going to be done. That's the nature of software. And then so if we can accept that we'll never be done, what we can do at that point is understand that we can pace the work that we have to do and leave time for practice. And then so when we pace the work that we actually have, what we can do is we can say, what is going to be a good day for me? So we understand that there's an infinite amount of work that's coming in. The stream will never stop. And then so we can say, of all the things that I have to do today, if I can accomplish A and B, that's going to be a good day for me, right? And so if I accomplish those two things, say by 3 o'clock, then I can have those 2 hours that I set aside to practice. And the balance there is whether or not you're trying to make yourself happy or your boss happy, your client happy or something like that, is finding that spot where the amount of work that you believe that you can get done in a good day is really what they're expecting. So you can say to your client or your boss or yourself, today I'm going to be doing this. And that gives your boss or your client or yourself an opportunity to say, yeah, okay, I think that sounds about right. And then you can do that. So that's what I mean by working with intention. It's understanding that the amount of work is infinite and that you have to pace yourself or else you're going to burn out. And in pacing yourself, you can set aside time for practice. And we just say, what's going to be a good day? You choose those things and you do that. And then you move on with your life, which is great. So that's what I'm talking about with intention and practice and making time for that. Now, let's get into the COD a bit. So when I talk about practice, we kind of think about deliberate practice, right? Deliberate practice is kind of like a really focused type of practice. So you could say, well, I practice all day because I'm running code, but you're not practicing one specific part of that, right? And this is where things like katas come in. Katas are really just like problems that you solve over and over and over and over again. So the one that I really like to do is the Gilded Rose kata. And if you're interested in refactoring katas, you can go to this GitHub user, Emily Baucher. She has a lot of refactoring katas and a lot of different katas that are available for you to do. And they're available in all sorts of different languages. So they're available in PHP, JavaScript, Java, C#. The list goes on and on and on. You can head over there, see what they've got, pick one and do it tomorrow, right? And then do it again the next day. And well, maybe the next day is a Saturday, so maybe you take a break or something like that. But Monday to Friday, whatever. So we're going to be doing the Gilded Rose kata. And so the story behind the Gilded Rose is it's a store that sells various items. And each item has a sell-in value and a quality value. And each day a procedure is run that updates the sell-in and quality for each item in the store. Okay, so that's basically what the Gilded Rose is. It's a store. And so there's rules for the various items that are sold in the store on how they update. So for just generic items in the store, say it's a stapler or whatever, the sell-in is decreased by 1, which means it's like best before date sort of thing. The number of days before it actually has to be sold by, it goes down by 1. And the quality of the item also goes down by 1, but it can never go below 0. And that's kind of a rule for all items in the store. Their quality can never go down to 0 or below 0. But the store also sells aged brie, right? And so aged brie is a cheese, so cheese gets better, right, as it ages. So the sell-in still goes down by 1, still has to be sold by a certain date, but its quality actually increases by 1 every day. And there's another hard limit there. So the quality can never go above 50, and that's on aged brie. And they sell another type of item in the store, and those are backstage passes to a concert. And then so because it's a concert, you still have to sell it every day. So the sell-in value goes down by 1, but the quality, the tickets become more valuable the closer you get to the concert. So when there's 10 days or less in the concert, the quality increases by 2. And when there's 5 days or left in the concert, the quality increases by 3. But after the concert, the quality drops to 0. So it's one of those kind of nested sort of if statements you can kind of picture in your head for that one. It also sells sulfurous, which is a legendary item. And so as it's a legendary item, the rules go, it never has to be sold, and its quality never decreases. So that's another item in the store. Now, our job is for adding rules for updating a new type of item that they actually want to sell in the store, and that's a conjured item. So the rules that they have for the on update is the sell-in should still decrease by 1, but the quality should decrease twice as fast as generic items. So generic items, if you remember, the quality decreases by 1 each day, So for conjured items, the quality is going to decrease 2 times, or twice, by 2 each day. Not twice, just by 2. So there's some constraints though as well. And when we get into the code, you'll see that there's 2 classes in this kata. There's a Gilded Rose class, and we're allowed to change the update method in it, but we can't change this other class called item. We're not allowed to make any changes to it at all. It's just one of the constraints that goes with the kata, and these constraints are kind of used to kind of simulate real world scenarios. So in this one, item could be like an external API or something like that. And we can't go out and we can't change external code. It could be vendor code or something like that. So it's just something that they're putting in place to kind of make us work around that. All right, so let's take a look at the code. There is a lot of nested conditional logic, and it's pretty hard to reason about. So I'm actually just going to switch over to PHP Storm, and we'll take a look at it, okay? Actually, these are the tests. I just want to make sure everybody, this looks like a fine size. Sean?
Sorry, maybe just bump it up a little bit.
Okay.
Two bumps.
2 bumps? All right, so let's open up my preferences. I'll go to font and JetBrains Mono. So let's go to 18.
Yeah.
Current editor font JetBrains Mono 16. So let's go to 18. Let's apply that. Go to OK. Did that change anything? Uh-oh.
I didn't notice a change.
Font. All right. So there's a couple of spots where you can actually change the font in PHP Storm. So yeah, there we go. That's probably what's going to do for us. Yeah, there we go.
Cool. That looks great.
Better? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the update quality method of the Gilded Rose class, and you can see here we're going to iterate over all of the items, and we've got these like really nested conditional statements. So the code just kind of breathes in and then out and then in and then in again and then out and then in a little bit and in and in and in. And you can kind of see how like you can understand. I mean, if you're being honest with yourself, you can kind of understand how code like this might actually evolve over time, right? So you might think, when the Gilded Rose first started, they just sold generic items, right? And then they wanted to start selling aged brie, but aged brie had different rules. So they had to put an if condition says, oh, hey, if the name is aged brie, well, actually, if it's not aged brie, then we're going to do this, right? And you can kind of see how, like, as the requirements get introduced, there's all of these different if this, if that sort of things that come in. And you eventually end up after a couple months or years or whatever with a chunk of code that looks like this. And it gets to the point where you're just kind of scared to change it, right? Because you're not really sure how it kind of works. I mean, if we're really being honest with ourselves, because like it's a lot to hold in your head, right? If the quality is less than 50, okay, the quality is less than 50. If the name is equal to backstage passes, okay. But if the sell is less than 11, there's a lot for us to keep in our head there, so it's hard to reason about. So the refactoring that I'm going to do is going to be kind of like, how do we break all of these conditionals up and replace it with another development technique called polymorphism. So that's what we're going to be doing. Let's go back to the slides real quick. So what are we going to be doing? Okay, so we're going to be replacing all of that conditional code with polymorphism. So polymorphism is a big word. It might be new to some people watching, so let's dig into that just a little bit, okay? So polymorphism. Polymorphism is basically you just have multiple classes that all share the same public API. So if we're doing PHP here, think interface, right? And then so an example, like a kind of the classic example that's given for polymorphism is that all animals make a sound, but the sounds they make are different. So ducks go quack and cows go moo and pigs go oink and old MacDonald had a farm, right? As it relates to the Gilded Rose though, what we're actually going to be doing is we're going to be creating a class for each type of item that is sold in the store. And each class will have an update method that's responsible for updating the item that it's holding onto. So we're going to be ending up with the 4 types here. We're going to have an aged brie class that has an update method, and a backstage pass that has an update method, and a sulfurous that has an update method, a generic item that has an update method. And then you can see that for conjured items, the real beauty of this technique is if I want to add another type of item to the store, say conjured item, I just have to create another class called conjured item, teach the code how to identify an item that is a conjured item, and then use its update method to update it. And then the number of items that we can sell in the store is effectively endless, but the complexity of adding those items to the store stays the same. So it's really kind of great that way. If we're talking about solid programming principles, this is the open-closed principle. So the Gilded Rose store is open to extension, but closed for modification. So the technique that we're going to use, though, is one that I thought was really kind of neat. I learned it from, well, I've seen it in practice twice. It was really kind of neat. I learned it from my boss, Grant. And what it does is it uses code coverage metrics to identify code that gets run when you're updating certain types of items, and then we can then use those code coverage metrics to isolate that code into like individual chunks. So we'll have a chunk for updating age brie and a chunk for updating backstage pass, which we can then turn into classes. So it's a really fun kind of neat technique that actually makes code coverage metrics useful, in my opinion. So we're not just going for vanity and 100%, we can actually use them for good. All right, so I think that's it. So let's get into the code and we'll go from there. A couple of things. I do have, I guess I was searching for 50. There we go. I use a lot of keyboard shortcuts when I'm coding in PHP Storm. It's one of the things that I actually try to work on when I'm practicing, is if I have to like right click or something like that, I check to see, hey, is there a keyboard shortcut for that?
Sorry,
So,
Colin, just before we get further, maybe you could just bump it another 2 points.
Sure.
Yeah, sorry, it's just looking at it now and wondering about the quality of the video later. And now that we're really diving in, I want to make sure people can see.
All right. How's that?
Yeah, looks good to me.
Okay. So I use a lot of keyboard shortcuts. And so I have a plugin called Presentation Assistant that kind of shows the keyboard shortcut that I'm using in the bottom. So let's just say I want to collapse this if statement or something like that. I can do Command minus, and you'll see folding collapse shows up there. I can do Command plus to make it bigger. So hopefully that helps a little bit. If you want me to slow down ever, just tell me to slow down, go over something again, but we'll go from there. Okay, so for this technique to work, we need 100% code coverage. Now, the Gilded Rose comes with a lot of great requirements that we can actually use to create those tests. So I have the tests here, and we can see them here. So I have a bunch of tests that says, oh, hey, it reduces the sell-in date by 1 for regular items, and it reduces the quality by 1. I'm not going to go into what those tests actually do on the inside, but if I run them with coverage, you can see that we have 100%. Well, 100% of the files, 94% of the lines, and in the Gilded Rose, 100% of the lines are actually covered. So I'm safe to do my refactor. It's a really important thing, actually, when you're refactoring code, to have coverage of that, to have adequate tests. Refactoring, again, is changing the structure of the code, but not changing its behavior. And there's no way of actually validating that you haven't changed the behavior unless you actually have tests to say, yeah, it's doing what it did before. So there's another way of kind of capturing what the code does called gold master testing, which after this, if we wanted to get into, if there's time, I can go over that a little bit as well. But let's just keep pushing forward. And we'll see where we're at. So we have 100% code coverage on our Gilded Rose, which means I'm safe to make the changes that I've got. I'll run the code. I'll run the tests a lot just to make sure we haven't broken anything along the way. Okay. So let's give myself some space here and then head back over to the Gilded Rose. All right. So this update quality method is the method that we're going to be changing. Okay. And so the first step that I want to actually do when I'm doing this refactor is take the main body of work that I'm going to be working on and extract it to a method, just kind of like move it away. So I'm going to do that now. So I'm going to start collapsing this code down, okay? Just to make it easier for me to move. So here we go. And I'm going to extract this chunk of code, so the body of the for each loop. I'm going to extract it to a method. The name doesn't matter too much right now. When we're doing refactors like this, you kind of make a mess before you make things nice and pretty. So the code's going to go pretty much everywhere. Think of it as like if you're cleaning out your closet or if you're cleaning out your cupboards, you have to pull everything out, put it on your table, make a big mess before everything gets nice and pretty again. When you put everything back nice and organized, that's effectively what's happening now, and it happens in every refactor, so don't worry. I'm just going to call it update though. Pretty generic, but that's fine. So I made a change. I used my tool to do that, but I'm going to run my test just to make sure nothing's busted. And so I have all my tests are passed, except the one that I've ignored. The ignored test, I guess we could just jump into it real quick, is this one for conjured items. So we actually haven't implemented it. So I just in here say, just mark it as incomplete. Back to the gilded rose. All right. So now we have like the main chunk of code that we're going to be working on. We have it pulled out. The first thing we can do now is just pick any item and let's start identifying the code that actually gets executed when we update that type of item. Okay, so the first one I see here is ageBrie. So let's create an update ageBrie method, right? So the first thing I want to do at this point is I'm just going to make this this magic string here just a constant. So I'm going to make a constant. I'm going to let PHP Storm pick that as ageBrie for myself. And this is the technique. So what we need to do is we need to add some branching up here in our body to say, hey, if it's ageBrie, then run the update ageBrie method. Otherwise, just run the update method. So we can wrap this in an if else statement. And just for now, I'm going to say just if true, right? I've changed the structure of the code. So I want to make sure that I haven't broken anything. So I'll run the tests again. And the tests are still green, which is great. Now that I've got that, I'm going to duplicate this line and just move it down here into the else and change this to if false. So I'm just changing the way the code executes right now. So we're never going to enter into this block of code. This is eventually, this code here is going to be the code that updates the ageBrie ageBrie items. But I just want to make sure that if it's not, we're just going to run this standard update again. So again, run my tests and away we go. Now what I can do is I can say update ageBrie. Okay. Now you'll see that this doesn't exist anymore or exist yet, but it will. We're going to say if the item name is equal to ageBrie, then update the ageBrie. So where are we going to get this method from? Update ageBrie. Well, we already have a method that updates everything. And when I say everything, I mean it also updates ageBrie. So what we can do is we can jump down to this method and we can just copy it. And I can make this update ageBrie. Now you might be cringing right now, right? Talking about dry, those sorts of things. Just go with me here. Now that I've got that, everything looks like it's going to run. So let's just run the test, make sure that I'm still green. Well, I still am, but now let's run with coverage. And this is the identify part. So now that I ran this with coverage, you'll notice that I now only have 73% coverage on my Gilded Rose class. That's because I have two methods that are responsible for updating the item. This one here is responsible for updating ageBrie, and then update is responsible for updating just any other type of item. And you can see that here in the gutter, there's code that just doesn't execute when the item being updated is ageBrie. So all these red sections here just say, hey, this code doesn't execute. And because it doesn't execute, that means that I can just delete it. I don't even have to read it. So I can come in here, I can just start deleting code, which always feels nice. And I'm going to leave it so that there's only green coverage in here. So I'm going to delete this. I'm not even really reading this code yet. It just goes away, which is really kind of nice. But you'll see like I can run this code and then I imagine it'll still be green. We're still good. But we've got some like really weird looking code here, right? Like we've got this if and then nothing else do something else. We can use PHP Storm to kind of like clean this up for us. So there's these sections here that are like if do nothing, right? So this can just go away. So we can just delete that element altogether. And then for these ones here where we have if nothing else do something else, we can flip the if else statement. So it says if the name is equal to hbree or something else, then do this. Now looking at this again, you can see we're in a method called update hbree. And this condition says if the item name is hbree, so that's effectively true, right? True or anything is true. So we don't actually need this condition at all. So we can just unwrap that and just leave it like this. Again, when we look at this, it says if the item name doesn't equal sulfurous. Well, it can't equal sulfurous at this point because it's hbree. We can just unwrap that code again. In here, we've got another one of those empty block statements with an else. So we can flip that. And then again, the item name is hbree. So let's just unwrap that. And now looking here, this is our method specific to updating hbree. So we can run our tests. And they're still green. We haven't broken anything. But if we run with coverage, we won't be at 100% yet. So digging back into the source, we'll see we're at 95%. And that's because there's still code that exists in this update method here that is specific to hbree. So we're just going to do the same thing in the update method. We're going to look for the red, and then we're just going to delete it. So here's a spot that says red. So I'm going to delete that and then remove that unused element. And we're back to green now. But let's keep looking through and look for things that says, is it hbree? So here's something that says, if the item name doesn't equal hbree, and it can't now, like that's always a true statement in this update method because we have a method specific to updating hbree. So we can just unwrap that conditional. And let me see, I think there's another one in here. Yeah, here we go. If the item name doesn't equal hbree. So again, that's effectively true. So we have true and, so when we're looking at logical operations here, whether or not we're going to enter into this condition, into this block here, is completely dependent on how this evaluates. So this is actually useless. We can just delete that. And let's run our code. I'll run our tests, which runs our code, I suppose. And the 16 tests that we actually have passed, which is good. If we run with coverage, we should be back to 100%, which is where we wanted to be. So that's actually the identify and isolate method that I'm talking about. So we identified the code that actually executes when we want to deal with one certain type of an item. And then we isolated it into one method specific to that item. So that's identify and isolate. So that was hbree. There's 3 other types of items that we have to do this for before we can start introducing the polymorphism. So I'm just going to start rolling with that, okay? So the next item that we have in update is backstage passes. So the method is exactly the same. I'm going to, so I might go a little bit faster. I hope that's okay. Tell me to slow down if you need to, if there's any questions along the way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to extract this to a constant. I'm going to replace all of the occurrences of that. And I'm just going to let PHP Storm choose what the constant is. Now that I have that constant, I can come up to the update quality method, and I can do the same thing with this update. So I'm going to wrap this. Oops, that's not the button I wanted to use. In an if else. And I'm just going to jump right to it this time. So I'm going to say if the item name is equal to backstage passes, then what we actually want to do, I'm going to duplicate this, move it down, is we want to update backstage passes. We don't have that method yet, so I'm going to jump down to update. I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to just use a copy of that for update backstage passes. Sorry, it's time to take my blood pressure medication. So old. Backstage passes. All right. Now we can see that if the item is HBRE, we're going to call the update HBRE method. Otherwise, we're going to check to see if it's backstage passes. If it is, we're going to call update backstage passes. Otherwise, we're just going to call update. You can kind of see how this is going. So let's run our tests, and we're good. Let's run with coverage. And again, the coverage has dropped down. And so let's see what doesn't get used when we update backstage passes. There's a bunch of code here. That can go away. Let's Here's some. Gone. I mean, it always feels good to delete code, right? The reason for that, I always feel, is like bugs can't live in code that doesn't exist. And so the best way to write code is to not write code at all, in my opinion. All right, so here I'm going to unwrap this statement because it says if the name is backstage passes, and yeah, of course it is. The name doesn't equal sulfurous. And digging into this chunk of code here, if the name equals backstage passes, sure. And then let's flip this into the if else. And now it says if the item name is backstage passes, which means we can just unwrap that. So now what we've done is we've isolated all of the code specific to updating backstage passes. So let's take a look at update and see what doesn't get run in update now. All this code. This is fantastic. Gone. This can go away. What else we got? Oh, here's some backstage passes stuff. Oh, here's code that doesn't run. That goes away first. Gone. And then let's delete that. Here, again, the item name can't equal backstage passes anymore. So that goes. And this goes away as well. All right, perfect. So now our update only deals with sulfurous and generic items. So let's deal with sulfurous next. Okay, well, let's run our test to make sure. Okay, always run your tests. Having fast running tests is really important, period, but also very important when you're doing something like this and you run the test so much. So let's deal with sulfurous now. So let's extract this to a constant. All right, and let's jump up to our update method where it's being used here. So we're going to wrap that in an if-else condition. And we're going to say if the item name is equal to sulfurous, bump that down, and we're going to say update sulfurous. All right, so that doesn't exist yet. So let's just go down to the update method and copy it one last time and call this update sulfurous. So back up to the update method. Here, let me just jump there. So now this looks like, hey, if it's HBRE, let's update the HBRE. Otherwise, update backstage passes or possibly sulfurous, or we've got this generic update method. And it is getting messy, but this is what I was talking about. This is what I warned about. Things are going to get messy before they get clean. So let's run the test, make sure we haven't broken anything again. They're good, and let's run with coverage. And so, again, we're at 91% here. So let's see what happens when we try and update sulfurous. So this doesn't run. We can get rid of that. Oh, I don't think I got rid of it. I just think I collapsed it. There we go. Get rid of that. We'll get rid of that. Collapse this down and then get rid of that. And now we're just left with a whole bunch of empty if statements. So we can delete the unused element here, delete that unused element, delete that unused element, and then delete that unused element. So update sulfurous doesn't actually do anything. It doesn't update. Now, if you remember from when we were talking about sulfurous, it's a legendary item. It says it never needs to be sold, and the quality never decreases. So all that code that was in the original Gilded Rose with those checks to say sulfurous, don't do anything and whatnot, that was really just taking into account that sulfurous just doesn't change. So you might feel tempted not to have an update sulfurous method, but I would stress to just stick to the method and just go with it, because it might surprise you later. Maybe it's used for something, maybe it's not, but just keep going with it. Let's take a look at update and see what doesn't execute now. Well, everything does execute because it was sulfurous or generic items. So what we actually have to do now is we can just start unwrapping things, because the items coming into update will always not be sulfurous now. So we can just start unwrapping. All right, so this is the method here. This update is going to be what's responsible for updating our generic items, which is really kind of neat. I like that. But now we're left with this mess up here. We've identified and isolated all the code specific to updating the different types of items, but we've got this nasty if-else ladder. So the next thing I want to do is I want to clean this up, and then I want to start introducing the polymorphism. So ways that we can clean this up is we can start collapsing these ifs and elses like this into else-if statements. And we can do that using the editor, PHP Storm, which is great, which is awesome, which we're giving away 2 of them tonight. So we're going to merge that into else-if. And then here as well. And now we're left with something that reads a little better, but still has a lot of conditions in it. So if the item name is agebrie, then we're going to update the agebrie, or backstage passes, or sulfurous, or whatnot. We have this if-else ladder. So we're in a prime position now to start introducing the polymorphism once we have something like this. So what I'm going to start doing next is something that I call programming by wishful thinking. I'm going to start writing code that I want to exist, and then I'm going to make that code exist. So what I kind of want to do is I want to have a class for each type of item. So I'm going to call those inventory items. So I'm going to say inventory item equals new agebrie. So again, this class doesn't exist yet, but this is something I want to exist. And then I want to be able to call an update method on the agebrie, passing in the item that is responsible for updating that item. And so that's going to take over for this update agebrie method. So let's create this class. So I'm just going to ask the editor to do that for me. And then so it's going to say, hey, where do you want to put it? I'll just put it in the source directory here with all the other stuff. And we're just going to say, okay. And then there's the class for me, which is great. I'm going to get rid of this constructor because I don't really need it right now. And now I'm going to hop back to the Gilded Rose class. All right. Now, this update method is essentially going to be the update agebrie method. So before I tell the editor to just create that method for me, I'm going to come down to the agebrie and I'm going to copy its contents because I want to use it. And now I'm going to ask the editor to add the update method for me. And then I'm just going to replace the contents of that method with the update agebrie. So now I'm going to hop back to Gilded Rose, and I'm going to comment out this call to update agebrie. So now we've got a class specific for updating agebrie items. I'm going to run the tests, and they should pass for us. And you can see that they do, which is great. I'm going to delete this commented code because commented code doesn't deserve to stick around. And then I'm going to delete this unused method. So gone. And let's do the same thing for backstage passes. So inventory item equals new backstage passes. Again, this is the wishful thinking part. And then inventory item update item. Oh, what's actually kind of neat. One of the things that I wanted to do this time around was, Sean, you said that you were a pretty big fan of like types and type safety and things like that. So one thing that I can actually do is we can make sure that AgeBree and backstage passes have the same, implement the same interface, which is that update. So before I get to this, actually, what I think I might want to do is I might want to extract an interface from the AgeBree class. So you can do that with PHP Storm again by using the refactor menu to extract interface down here. It says, hey, what do you want to call your interface? And let's just call it inventory item. So AgeBree implements inventory item. We're going to put it in the app namespace in source, and we're going to choose the update method as a method that needs to be implemented when you're using the inventory item interface. And so there it is, interface inventory item. If we hop back over to AgeBree, we'll see that AgeBree now implements inventory item, which is pretty cool. So let's get back to backstage passes, and let's make our backstage pass class also implement that that inventory item interface. I haven't done this yet, so this is going to be fun. Backstage pass is, and inventory. You know what? Let's try something. No, I'm not going to get too wild. Inventory item update item. Okay, cool. So now let's jump down to update backstage passes, and let's copy the contents of that method again, and then back up to our class here and ask the editor to create that for us. So I wonder if there's a way in here, implements. So we can say, hey, it implements an interface. So choose interfaces to implement, add interface. See if that works. Oh, I wish I knew how to do this. Extends use caret space. No. Anyways, let's go. Okay. This is the practice part that I was hoping for. I'm not really sure how to make it have implements inventory item by default. But now that the editor is saying, hey, there's a method here that you need to add. So let's put those stubs in there. And there's that. And now that in my clipboard, I should have the contents of that still there. So that was actually kind of fun. I liked that. Let's go back to the gilded rows and comment this out and run our test, and hopefully we haven't broken anything. Yeah, we're good. So now let's get rid of the commented code and get rid of this update backstage passes. Perfect. So here's that weird sulfurous that doesn't do anything. I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to stick with the program, and I'm going to say inventory item equals new sulfurous, and inventory item update item. And now I don't need to copy anything, so I'll just say create that class. I really wish there was a way that I could choose that in there. It seems kind of weird that I can't. Implements inventory item, add the method stub, update. Let's get rid of construct and get rid of that. Okay. Back to the gilded rows now. And let's comment this out and run our tests. Okay, so we're still green, which is great. Now let's get rid of the unused update sulfurous method. And we've got one more to go. Sorry, I deleted too much. Got too hasty there. We've got our generic item, which is down here. So inventory item equals new generic item. And inventory item update item. Oops. And so let's jump down to the update method and copy its body Then hop back up. And let's add that class. Let's say we're going to implement the inventory item interface and then add those method stubs. So the editor does so much for you. I really stress that, you know, if you're using PHP Storm, or if you are, even if you're using VS Code or something like that, really kind of dig into it and see what it can do for you. And it's amazing what these IDEs can do. So let's hop over to the gilded rows. Let's comment out this very last one, run our tests, and we're still green, which is great. Always green. It's kind of like that Always Blue from Silicon Valley. It's a show on HBO. It's really good. And so now we're left with this here. This thing here. Now, when we look at this if-else ladder, so we do have this polymorphism, but it's still, if we had to add, you know, the conjured item or something like that, you might be tempted to add another else if the item's conjured item, then do this. We don't want to do that because that's not according to the open close principle that I talked about. What we kind of want is a way of allowing for extension on this Gilded Rose store without having to change it. So if you look actually what's happening here, where we create the item and then update it, this pattern repeats itself. So it's create, update, create, update, create, update, create, update. What we actually really need to do is create once and update once. So I'm going to pull this down, this inventory item update, out of the else statement, and then I'm going to delete all of the other calls to update. So we're going to have two parts of this for loop now. There's going to be a part that creates our inventory item here, and then the part that does the update. So let's run the test to make sure we haven't broken anything, and we haven't, so that's good. And now when you look at this, you might say this looks like a factory, which it is. It's a factory method. So let's extract that to something called, let's just call it factory for fun. And we'll put that in a method called factory. And now we have code that looks like this. If we're going to get the inventory item from our factory, and then we're going to call update on it. Let's change the return type instead of these to the interface, the inventory item. And run our tests. And yeah, we're all good. We're still green, which is nice. But this factory again lives in the Gilded Rose class, so we don't want that. So what we want actually is like a factory class. So let's think about what we're actually doing. We're going into the store, we're going to the back of the store, we're picking an item off the shelf, and we're updating it. And so our factory, to me, I kind of feel could be like a clerk that works in the store. So here's the wishful thinking again. I want to create a clerk that's going to act as our factory. So I'm going to say it's a new clerk. And then the clerk is going to give us the inventory item by picking it off the shelf. So I'm going to say clerk pick item. And it's going to give us the inventory item, and then we can call update on it. So let's create the clerk class. And get rid of the constructor because we don't use it. And then hop back to Gilded Rose again and have it make this pick method, okay? Now the pick method, again, is going to be the same as our factory, so let's copy the contents of it. So there we go. And then back up to here. And let's implement the pick method. So let's just paste in the contents of that method. Now, one thing you'll notice, the editor is telling us, hey, these constants don't exist. That's actually the error. It's not found in clerk, and that's because we ripped them out of Gilded Rose. So we need to move them from the Gilded Rose into this class. So if we go over here and we go up to these constants, we can move them using our editor. So we can move them to the clerk class, and we can just say move aged brie and backstage pass and sulfurous, and just move them into the clerk class with that refactor. If we go over back to clerk, you can see now that they're here, and this isn't complaining anymore, which is pretty good. All right, let's see if we've broken stuff. Let's get rid of this call to the factory and run our tests. And we're good, which is great. We don't need this anymore, so let's get rid of that. And let's see, does the pick say that it returns? It doesn't have a return type, so let's throw inventory item on there. So what this is going to give us is the IntelliSense. So if we're in the gilded rows and we want to know what it is that we can do with our inventory item, now the IntelliSense knows, hey, you know, clerk pick is going to give us back an inventory item. That inventory item has a method on it called update that accepts an item parameter, and we can just use the editor there to do that for us. Run our tests. We're good, and we're pretty close to being done for the replacing conditional with polymorphism. There's just one other refactor that I'd like to do before I say, you know, wipe my hands and walk away. And it's this here. So the clerk picks the item and it gets stuffed into the inventory item, and then we call one method on the inventory item and then throw it away. So this is a temporary variable that just kind of smells a little bit to me. So there's a refactoring called inline variable that I like doing. We inline it, and then it looks like this. So the clerk picks the item, and then we call update on it, and our tests are still green. And now we can implement that conjured item if we wanted to. It is currently, we've gone close to an hour now. So Sean, Jason, should we stop now?
I know James needs to log off
sorry.
in about 10 minutes. I'm enjoying the talk. I'm always up for learning these kind of things. I also know it's pretty late your time. I defer to you on how much energy you have.
All right. First, apologies, James, for calling you Jason. I apologize.
Don't worry about it.
I think what we can do then, conjured item is actually pretty straightforward, and that'll get us to a completely green test suite. So let's check that out, and then we'll see there. So we want to add new behavior. Are you okay with that?
I think, yeah, one thing I realized that we might have some questions from the audience. I do see one already. Okay. I have one, so we'll show
let's do that then. Let's do that. Oh,
questions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. So the one, I'm going to jump ahead because I am the host, so sucks to be you, Chris Callender, my buddy. What I didn't capture, and maybe I missed it. So you got the green line, or the red and green lines on your sidebar there, which tie into whether you have a test for that. You have test coverage. Mm-hmm. How do you turn that on?
Sure, no problem. So it's okay. So how do you? Is the question, how do you run tests with coverage?
Well, no, because I write my test and then I run I forget the PHP unit report command afterwards, and it will print me out an HTML report. Mm-hmm. And I've seen people have screenshots with it built into their editor that shows the green where they have a test. I'm just curious, how can I do that to make sure that I'm covering my butt properly?
Sure, no problem. So in PHP Storm specifically, in order to run your tests inside PHP Storm, we need to set up an interpreter. And then in order to be able to run the tests in debug, right, to be able to stop it and do step debugging and whatnot, we have to have xdebug available to the PHP CLI or the interpreter. So that's step one. So if you open up the preferences in PHP Storm and you look for interpreter, where'd that go? That's weird. I'm just going to type PHP. So PHP. That's languages and frameworks. Editor. Where? Normally, I just search for interpreter, and it shows up. I wonder if this is a new. Just 1 second. Languages and frameworks. PHP. Debug.
Would it be under test frameworks?
Shouldn't be. Test frameworks. After the script. This is weird. All right. When in doubt, go to Google, right? So let's take a peek here. I'm dumbfounded at this moment. So here, PHP Storm 2020.2 interpreter. Configure local PHP interpreters. All right. So it says settings, preferences, languages and frameworks, PHP on the PHP page that clicks CLI interpreter list. All right, well, let's see what happens. So it says settings and preferences, languages and frameworks, PHP, languages and frameworks, PHP. Oh, it's for God's sakes. All right. Anyways, right here. So you open up here and then you can say, you can add multiple PHP interpreters. What's important is that you have down here debugger, right? So you said that you already get the HTML report. So your PHP interpreter does have xdebug. You need to make sure that the PHP Storm knows where that lives. So I personally don't have it set up so that it's loaded every single time because it can slow down the CLI. So I just tell PHP Storm where the where the xdebug extension actually lives, so that it can use it when it wants to. So you have to set that up. And then when you run with coverage, so this is run the tests, run in debug, and then run with coverage. You just need to run that. And you can see the command that actually gets executed. Down here it says this is where xdebug is. Enable coverage and run this PHP unit script and create Clover coverage. And this is all just something like I didn't have to configure this. It was just this little button here that runs it. And then it shows up in here. It's just, I guess it's that simple and that hard at the same time, just knowing where to look.
Yeah.
When you look in here in your settings for coverage, you can make it look like coverage. Holy smokes. I wonder if the search is different. PHP font. Yeah. When you look in PHP, or it's like editor settings or something like that, you can configure how it looks.
Yeah.
So I changed it to be a brighter green because I use this material oceanic. Code editing, code style, color scheme, general, PHP. Somewhere in here, you can say for coverage, use lines like this.
Yeah, that part makes sense. But now I know the one part that was missing with the CLI part and actually clicking the right button, because I usually click the green arrow.
Yeah.
I'm gonna jump in. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I made a small YouTube video on my YouTube channel about setting up xdebug in PHP Storm. Okay. And it's about 15 minutes long. You can check that out.
Nice. We'll try and get a copy of that for the show notes for everybody. I'm going to pass it over. So Chris Callender had this question. How often do you do the kata, and does it speed up your productivity with your regular code?
Yeah, it really does. So this particular kata, so at Vehikl, the way that we set up our day is into 3 work sessions. So we do 2 work sessions that are for working and focused on delivering for our clients. And then the other work session is for personal development and growth. So typically once a week, I will do a series of katas for, an hour or so. And then in those other growth sessions, I'll work at, learning about like Livewire or something like that. We'll do a mob on learning about Livewire or learning about something about CSS, those sorts of things. So typically for me, I'll do like this particular kata, I don't know, once a week or so. And the things that I've learned doing it are just whenever I try, it's really about mastering the editor at this moment. How can I learn new things to do with it? How can I improve like my efficiencies? Because they do eventually add up over time. It's really quite amazing to see what the editor does for you these days. So yeah, I do it about once a week, and yeah, I definitely have seen an uptick in my productivity. There's it's all about investment though. There's a YouTube video that we like to watch. It's called "Useful Doesn't Always Mean Used," and it explains this thing called the capability trap. It gets I'll try to sum this up. Basically, whenever you try and start doing something new, your productivity is going to dip, right? So what happens is people get into this bottom of the productivity, into like the dip, and they think, well, this isn't working, and they give up. But if you keep pushing through, eventually your efficiencies will gain, and then that investment that you've made in that practice or learning that new tool or whatever will start paying dividends, and your productivity will go up. So it's a lot of like work smarter, not harder sort of mentality.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So the other question is, well, we we found the link and we shared it on the notes. Alex said, thank you. Here's another question. I'll bring it up. Dan Clausen, how do you learn about new IDE features? There are a few I picked up from the session that I hadn't seen or used before.
So we do, again, a lot of it is by working with other people. So I feel like this is a sales pitch for Vehikl, but the way that we work at the company is we do something called mob programming. And mob programming is like 4 or 5 developers, all working on a single computer, all working on one task at a time to solve that. And so I get exposed to a lot of other people's like habits and techniques. And I'll see like they'll do something and that I've never seen before, and I'll stop them and I'll say, hey, what did you just do there? An example of that is one of the last growth sessions I was in. We were doing some PHP unit testing and kind of playing around with mocks. And we learned about the matchers that you can have in Mockery, like the Hamcrest matchers, and how you can make your mock say they're going to be like this method's going to be called with this type of item. It was something that I'd never learned before, but because I was working with somebody that actually thought that was something that everybody knew, like it was never like an opportunity for them to say, oh, hey, I learned this new thing. So I saw them do that and I said, stop, what did you just do? Show me what you just did. And they showed me and I learned something. So the way that I learn like new techniques, new keyboard shortcuts, all those sorts of things is by working with other people. Another way is if I have to go digging for something, like that unwrap, like when I did Command Shift Backspace, that's an unwrap. That actually didn't have a key binding, but I knew that there was got to be a way for the editor to kind of like get rid of some chunk of code. So I dug into my key bindings. Hopefully that comes up. Yeah, the key map. And I searched I found unwrap in here. And I just assigned a key binding to it because I figured this is going to be something that's useful for me. So I assigned a key binding to it. And now it's one of my own personal settings that I show other people. But yeah, so work with other people. If you go digging for something that the editor does using your mouse, see if there's a key binding that you can do. And also assume that it's been solved and spend 15 minutes looking for it, right? If after 15 minutes you can't find anything, give up. But do the work because you'll probably save more than 15 minutes in the end if you find something.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things I've noticed especially in the Laravel/PHP community, a lot of the people that do, let's say, talks like yourself, from other people that come to mind, Joe Ferguson, blanking on other names, but everybody seemed to be either in the Slack or Discord channels, or they're accessible via GitHub or Twitter, and they're usually very open to teaching people, certain things. So I imagine if somebody saw one of your videos and went, "Hey, stop! How do you do that?" They could first, of course, you would want them to spend the 15 minutes doing a little bit of research, but I'm sure they could reach out through maybe even through the Meetup group, DM you like I did to you, and you're always willing to share, time permitting. So yeah, I think that's one fantastic thing about this community, is there's a lot of people that are willing to share, and even to the point that I think I saw a tweet by Taylor. It might be 2 years ago now, but this community is one where he hasn't seen other communities where people are falling over themselves to be the one to teach someone something new. So we don't have any other questions that have come in. So what I'm going to do, I'll share my screen. We'll start wrapping up the show here.
Stop. Then. Do you just take over then? Is that what happens? Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I got full control.
Okay.
Thank you, Colin, for coming on, pulling the bait and switch on us for what probably was a more interesting talk.
Good.
Ultimately, I really enjoyed it. I learned some new things, and I can't now, going back to the mantra, learn something that will make you money tomorrow. I'm going to turn on that PHP code coverage thing and actually figure out if my tests are, covering as much as I really think they are. Wrapping up, we didn't have any sponsors, but our PHP Storm giveaway, one of the things we did was what we do for we take the people who leave a comment and we run them through a survey, or a random user picker. So James did that, and he had to jump off. He had a hard stop at 7:30. He jumped off, he ran it, and Aaron MP is the winner. Aaron, I'll message you through Meetup and send you the license. And congratulations, Aaron. And so yeah, I talked about the t-shirt. I will share the survey in the show notes. And of course, getting involved. I always encourage people to come in and give a talk. It doesn't have to be 30 minutes. It can be 10 minutes, and we can have a couple people doing 10-minute talks or 15-minute talks, something really quick. One of the things where I got started in doing talks is I gave a talk about dependency injection. And when I look back at that talk, I cringe, but through the process of doing it, I actually learned a lot about dependency injection. So I think there's a lot of power in being able to teach something and teach yourself something, to teach others that concept. It will only make you stronger.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I encourage anybody, come online. We're open. We will help you as much as we can. Twitter, follow us, and we will follow you. We'll retweet any, screenshots of the YouTube video. We used to have people take pictures at the meetup, but not anymore for a little bit. And again, Colin, I thank you very much for coming online, and we will see everybody in a month. Oh, and one more thing, Colin, he runs was it GPUG or Toronto?
GPUG. It's called the GPUG PHP User Group. It's a weird, unfortunate naming. So I live in Guelph, and so we started the GPUG in Guelph. So it was the Guelph PHP Users Group. Then we started migrating and covering more area into Waterloo, Kitchener, Cambridge area, and so we needed a rebrand. And we put a lot of effort, and we have the Meetup page. We had a website at the time. We have a Twitter account, so we didn't want to give up GPUG. So we just rebranded as the GPUG PHP User Group. So the G in GPUG stands for GPUG. It's just like PHP. So it's a recursive acronym.
Nice, I love it. I was in one of your meetups, I think a month ago it was now. Fantastic talks there. There's a lot of audience participation, very engaging group. I encourage people here to check out this talk. It is, Eastern time, so maybe if I schedule things right, you can watch the GPUG meetup. I guess it would be 2 or 3 p.m. our time, and then come on for the Vancouver PHP meetup. But yeah, I fully encourage you guys to check out Colin's meetup group. Lots of great people there and some great topics to learn from.
Thanks.
So with that being said, thank you everybody for watching, and we will see you in a month.
Awesome. Thanks again.